in Munich, Germany, but was released and continued on his trip. A source close to Schwarzenegger said he was detained for traveling with a Swiss luxury brand watch that he might be auctioning at his charity auction in Austria. According to the source, the star cooperated fully, answered all questions honestly, and was never asked to fill out a declaration form. He also agreed to prepay potential taxes on the watch.
Audience members expressed feeling moved and emotional at a Shenyun performance in Berkeley, California, leaving with a feeling of hope.
Theatergoers in Berkeley, California enjoyed Shenyun's classical Chinese dance performance.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I know we're only halfway through, but just the costumes and the singing and the message, and of course the physical ability of the artist is just absolutely incredible.
I thought the acrobatics were incredible. I really liked seeing all the flips and the tumbles and the spins. I mean, it's kind of mesmerizing.
I wanted to keep peeking up and seeing them play their instruments, but it was kind of exciting to know that it was live and these guys do all this work and it's not recorded. They're performing.
Oh, the baritone really blew me away.
Heroin, medicinal opioids, methamphetamine, and cocaine. On average, the leading cause of death was fentanyl, followed by methamphetamine and cocaine. Most are male, and the location of the deaths were in the Tenderloin, Soma, Hill neighborhood. City's previous record was in 2020, with 726 overdose deaths. City leaders have tried to tackle the homeless and drug epidemic, including setting up safe injection sites, but have not been successful.
Consuming high amounts of the red meat is linked to increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, according to a recent study. NTD's Stephanie Segal has the story.
A recent study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition tracked over 200,000 participants for up to 36 years. The end results found a significant association between regular red meat consumption and a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Processed meats such as bacon and hot dogs are shown to elevate this risk even further. Although the exact cause remains unclear, researchers suggest factors like excess body weight and potentially harmful components in red meat, such as heme iron and nitrosamines, may contribute to the increased risk. This study recommends limiting red meat intake and opting for plant-based proteins to reduce health risks, but emphasizes the need for further research in this area. Stephanie Segal, NTD News.
German authorities say Arnold Schwarzenegger was held for more than 2 hours at the Munich airport after failing to declare an item upon arrival. A customs press officer said the actor will face criminal tax proceedings.
According
security payments that are set to be released. For your reference, the cost of living adjustment is calculated by using the year-over-year rate, averaging out the years between July, August, and September. And so, back in the year 2021, Social Security recipients got a 1.3% bump in payments. In 2022, the increase was 5.9%. In 2023, the increase was a significantly higher 8.9% adjustment. And for this upcoming year, in 2024, the Social Security announced that it will be increasing by 3.2%, meaning that starting on January 1st of next year, of 2024, recipients of Social Security will have their checks increased by a cool 3.2%. Now, in terms of the dollar amount, quote, the retirement benefit is $50 a month on average once the cost of living adjustment goes into effect in January. $50 more on average per month translates to about $600 more per year, again, on average. Furthermore, besides the dollar amount increase, the cost of living adjustment also increased the thresholds for when the government begins deducting money from certain recipients of Social Security. Quote, for early retirees, or those who retired before the full federal retirement age, the Social Security Administration deducts $1 from every $2 above a designated threshold. It will be raised to $22,320 from $21,240 starting in 2024. The year an individual hits the full retirement age, the agency deducts $1 from every $3 earned above a second limit. Starting next year, that limit will increase from $56,520 to $59,520. Meaning, in plain English, that early retirees, as well as those who continue working past the retirement age, will see slightly higher Social Security checks. Now, the obvious question here is whether this is enough for seniors to be able to offset the rise of the actual cost of living. Well, soon after the official adjustment was announced, an organization called the Senior Citizens League. They came out with a statement saying that while this 3.2% adjustment is above the average, when you look back over the last 20 years, it still falls short of the current economic reality facing seniors. In fact, this organization, they conducted an internal survey of their members, and based on that survey, quote, older adults are pessimistic about their finances in the coming months and the growing potential for Social Security benefit cuts. Furthermore, over 2/3 of the seniors who were surveyed, specifically 68% of the seniors, they said that, quote, their household expenses remain at least 10% higher than 1 year ago, although the overall inflation rate has slowed. The situation has persisted over the past 12 months. And so what this appears to amount to is that on paper, a 3.2% adjustment sounds nice, since it is higher than the 20-year average. However, that number, the 3.2%, it's calculated based on the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, which, for one, is a heavily manipulated measurement tool which allows the government to essentially downplay inflation. But then also, secondly, besides the fact that it's a tool that already downplays inflation, it doesn't even adequately measure what seniors and retirees in America actually pay for. Despite these generous cost of living adjustments, the current economy has a tremendous amount of seniors back into said inflation. And for the reason was put out by the Senate's special committee, you can see it up on your screen, report. It focused on how senior Americans are having to unretire in order to make ends meet. Quote, inflation has been a factor in forcing retirees back to work. 43% of those considering returning to work are doing so because of inflation. To the flexibility it provides. Nearly 1 in 3 independent or gig workers are over the age of 55. And so what that means is that while 60% of retirees who are thinking of going back to work are just looking for something to do, a full 43% are going back because of inflation. Really keep these types of numbers in mind when you hear politicians, as well as spokespeople for politicians, saying things like this.
When you look at inflation, when we look at where we are economically, and we are in a strong, we are stronger economically than we have been. When you look at the unemployment numbers at 3.6%, when you look at the jobs number, more than 8.7 million jobs created.
An economy so strong that citizens are going back into the workforce just to make ends meet. Now, the other question that you might be asking yourself is, where is the money coming from to fund this 3.2%? I mean, Sophie is headed towards the Social Security is just flush with cash. Well, the answer to that question appears to be simple. It's coming from us, the taxpayers. That's because alongside this 3.2% increase in Social Security benefits is a corollary increase in the amount that Americans are taxed. Quote, currently, only the first $160,200 of income is subject to the FICA payroll tax that helps to fund Social Security and Medicare. This maximum taxable earnings limit will increase to $168,600 beginning in January 2024, a 5.2% jump. Nothing like a cool little secret backdoor tax increase on approximately 20% of American households. However, I think that most people, they wouldn't even mind the amount that we're being taxed into Social Security if the federal bureaucracy wasn't so inept at managing the money. At that point, I believe, was summed up perfectly well in the following post on Twitter. Quote, by the time I'm 67, over $600,000 will be paid into Social Security on my behalf. That money would have been worth $1.9 million if I had gotten a 5% return. My annual interest would be $95,000. The government, on the other hand, promises me $3,075 per month at the age of 67, which is $37,000 per year.
In Munich, Germany, but was released and continued on his trip. A source close to Schwarzenegger said he was detained for traveling with a Swiss luxury brand watch that he might be auctioning at his charity auction in Austria. According to the source, the star cooperated fully, answered all questions honestly, and was never asked to fill out a declaration form. He also agreed to prepay potential taxes on the watch.
Audience members expressed feeling moved and emotional at the Shenyun performance in Berkeley, California, leaving with a feeling of hope.
Theatergoers in Berkeley, California enjoyed Shen Yun's classical Chinese dance performance.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I know we're only halfway through, but just the costumes and the singing and the message, and of course the physical ability of the artist is just absolutely incredible.
I thought the acrobatics were incredible. I really like seeing all the flips and the tumbles and the spins. I mean, it's kind of mesmerizing.
I wanted to keep peeking up and seeing them play their instruments, but it was kind of exciting to know that it was live and these guys do all this work and it's not recorded. They're performing.
Oh, the baritone really blew me away.
Are already preparing, saying, quote, "Today our adversaries are busily rebuilding their barriers." He noted that Russia's invasion of Ukraine put the future world order at stake, and that China is observing how the West is choosing to respond. At the same time, a UN report last year suggested Iran has enriched uranium over 83%. The substance is used to build nuclear weapons, while North Korea is threatening to expand its own arsenal. He's calling on the UK, US, and their allies to enhance combat powers and increase defense budgets. Japan is getting a major defense boost from Washington. It signed a deal with the U.S. Thursday to buy 400 Tomahawk missiles. The warheads are capable of hitting targets in China and North Korea. Japan has said before having long-range missiles is critical in case China invades Taiwan.
We're going to, as early as March, start the training for the Japanese servicemen on the Tomahawk.
Japan's defense minister said the two allies agreed to expedite the plan, given the increasingly severe security environment. The defense deal falls in line with Japan's goal to bolster its military. Just a month ago, it approved a record military budget for 2024. The total stands at over $50 billion, a 16% jump. Japan has been breaking away from its pacifism amid rising threats from China. The country promised never to maintain military forces except for self-defense after World War II. But now it's aiming to spend another $300 billion by 2027 to bolster its military. That would make Japan the third largest military spender after the U.S. and China. An infrastructure outreach project that offers loans to developing nations to build seaports and other framework. $1 trillion and 150 partner nations later, critics denounce it as a tool to spread the Chinese Communist Party's ideology overseas, and as a form of debt trap diplomacy, forcing poorer nations to hand over the rights to their newly built infrastructure when they can't pay off their Chinese loans. It's also been accused of fueling labor abuses and corruption. Those concerns have promoted distrust from partner countries, with Italy becoming the latest nation to formally back out of the deal late last year. It was also the only G7 nation to have signed on. Rome made the decision a month after the Philippines dropped out. Manila explained it would look for an alternative funding source for the 3 railway lines it planned to build under the Belt and Road Initiative and its promise of a $5 billion investment. That's all for today's China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at ChinaInFocusNTD.
Senate election in the state of Georgia, wherein both of their 2 Senate seats were up for grabs. It was basically a runoff election because no candidate had gotten 50% of the vote. And so while the presidential election took place on November 3rd of 2020, the special Georgia runoff election took place on January 5th of 2021. And in that 2-month interim period between the 2 elections, an organization called True the Vote was working to clean up the voter rolls over in the state of Georgia. Specifically, during this window of time, quote, True the Vote, its founder Catherine Engelbrecht, and several others had raised questions about whether 364,000 Georgia voters were improperly registered because their voter registrations conflicted with their mailing addresses. Essentially, the organization did compare the mailing data on hand with the data that was on the official voter rolls in the state. And they found discrepancies in the form of people allegedly not living in the state and the county where they were registered to vote. And so what this organization did was that they helped people at the local level file election challenges. Quote, Georgia law requires that voter challenges be made by other voters living in the same county. As 2 Georgia runoff elections, which were believed could determine control of the U.S. Senate, approached on January 5th of 2021, True the Vote narrowed its challenge list to about 39,000, eliminating those with a legitimate reason to live elsewhere, such as college students and active duty military. They then found volunteers to make challenges in about 40 of Georgia's 159 counties, meaning that because there was not enough time before the actual election, they narrowed down their list to just 39,000 names, people whose addresses they believed were different from what was on the voter roll books. They then not only helped the people at the local level file the actual challenges, but also, quote, True the Vote offered bounties from a $1 million reward fund for evidence of election malfeasance and sought to recruit citizen monitors to patrol polls and ballot drop-off locations. Essentially, they were recruiting people to monitor ballot drop boxes as well as paying people bounties if they were able to provide evidence of election wrongdoing. Now, as a practical matter, their efforts in this particular election did not really bear much fruit. The voter roll challenges did not really go anywhere, and in the end, the two Democrat candidates, Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, they wound up winning the Senate runoff elections. However, this is where the story, you can say, took on a bit of a twist. That's because this right here is Miss Stacey Abrams. She is a Democrat who ran multiple unsuccessful campaigns for Georgia governor. And this is Fair Fight Incorporated, an organization that Miss Stacey Abrams founded. And what happened after the runoff election is that Fair Fight Incorporated filed a lawsuit against True the Vote on behalf of several residents of Georgia. Their claim was that by questioning the voter rolls and by helping local Georgians to question the authenticity of the voter rolls, True the Vote was engaging in an act of voter suppression. According to their lawsuit, Fair Fight made the argument that, quote, finding actual fraud or ineligible voters was only a secondary concern for True the Vote, and that the real intention was to frighten Democrat-leaning voters from turning out in what were expected to be razor-thin runoff elections that would determine control of the United States Senate. Essentially, at the heart of the argument is that the Stacey Abrams-founded organization was making the claim that by questioning the validity of the voter rolls, True the Vote was actually in violation of the Voting Rights Act. And just for your reference, the specific part of that law that they claim was being violated was Section 11, subsection 2, which reads this, quote, no person, whether acting under color of law or otherwise, shall intimidate, threaten, or coerce, or attempt to intimidate, threaten, or coerce any person for voting or attempting to vote. And so you see, on the one hand, the argument was that these social media posts, articles, and podcast appearances by True the Vote urging people to challenge the voter rolls constituted a form of voter suppression. On the other hand, though, True the Vote's legal team was making the counter-argument that their actions, including their search for illegal votes, was fully protected under the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And so these were the two competing arguments in the case, which plodded along in the legal system for about 3 years before finally getting to trial. Now, eventually, the case did make it to trial, and after hearing both sides and considering the merits of the case, the judge ruled in favor of True the Vote. Specifically, in a fairly thick 145-page ruling, Judge Stephen Jones, who was appointed to the bench by Barack Obama, he ruled that this effort to challenge the eligibility of hundreds of thousands of Georgia voters did not violate the Voting Rights Act. Here's part of what he wrote. Quote, having heard the evidence presented and the arguments made by the parties, the court maintains its prior concerns about the manner in which True the Vote utilized Georgia law to challenge individual voters. The court, however, ultimately concludes that as a legal matter, the plaintiffs have not carried their burden to show a violation of Section 11B of the Voting Rights Act. The court entered judgment in favor of True the Vote. There is no evidence that True the Vote attempted to make any of the voters in this case feel timid or fearful, or that they experienced any actual reasonable intimidation. Essentially, what the judge determined here was that, for one, when True the Vote was using these social media posts, these articles, and these podcasts to urge people to challenge the voter rolls, they were not trying to intimidate the voters themselves, since it's even dubious whether those voters themselves would have even known about the existence of these articles and these podcasts. And then secondly, the judge found that these calls to action were protected speech under the First Amendment. Now, as you would imagine, the defendants in the case were thrilled with the ruling, with Ms. Catherine Engelbrecht, who's the founder of True the Vote, releasing this video as a response. And just for your reference, I'm going to speed up the video just a little bit so we can get through it faster.
Hey everybody, it's Catherine Engelbrecht with True the Vote, bringing you a great bit of breaking news. We've just learned from the Northern District Court of Georgia that the judge has rendered a decision in the case Fair Fight v. True the Vote. And that decision is that we have been fully vindicated. Today is a great day for America. Today is a great day for trustworthy elections. You see, we were sued by Fair Fight back in December of 2020 when we endeavored to help Georgia citizens file lawful electoral challenges, basically asking their counties to take a look at the voter records because it would seem, based on data that we could provide to them, it would seem that many of those voters, in fact, some 364,000 according to our data, had moved from either the county or state where that voter was registered. And so, in so doing, we drew a lawsuit from Fair Fight, and we have been battling it out for 3 years. Today, I am thrilled to tell you that the court has decided in our favor in full. We've beaten Stacey Abrams, fair fight, Mark Elias and his law firm and his gaggle of attorneys, and the Department of Justice. Thank you to all of you who stood so steadfastly by us through these tumultuous times. And there were some difficult moments along this journey, many, many changes, but we have continued to stand strong that it is right. It is not only right, it is necessary for citizens to stand for lawful elections, for trustworthy elections. And today is a great example of why we should continue. Justice has been served. Thank you all. God bless each and every one of you. And God bless America.
Organization releasing a lengthy statement of their own saying that the federal courts have failed to protect voting rights. Here's part of what they wrote in their statement. Quote, while there is much to make of the court's 145-page opinion, Fair Fight is disappointed that Georgians and voters nationwide must continue to wait for our federal courts to impose accountability in the face of widespread voter interference. They will make this decision, meaning that echo matter to the 2020. The question indicated that looking for illegal voters does not constitute a form of voter suppression. This right here is Ms. Fani Willis, the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, as well as the woman who's pushing forward the RICO case against both President Trump as well as 14 of his associates. However, just yesterday, Ms. Fani Willis was hit with some unexpected and rather bad news. Specifically, in a bombshell court filing, Ms. Fani Willis was accused of having an improper relationship with the top prosecutor in the Trump case, a relationship from which she allegedly benefited financially. Quote, the allegations are salacious. Arguably, the most famous district attorney in the country hired her romantic partner to help prosecute a former president and then profited from the arrangement. Now, to start with, among the co-defendants in the RICO case is this man right here, Mr. Michael Roman. In 2020, he was a senior staff member on the Trump campaign, but now he's facing 5 charges against him over in Fulton County. And yesterday, Michael submitted a filing with the court, you can see it up on screen for yourself, seeking to disqualify Ms. Fani Willis from overseeing the case altogether. This specific court filing, quote, accuses Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis of having an improper relationship with her top Trump prosecutor and financially benefiting from their alleged relationship. The filings allege that Nathan Wade, a special prosecutor, paid for vacations with Ms. Willis while using Fulton County funds that his private law firm had received. Records obtained by a local media outlet also show that Mr. Wade was paid more than $650,000 in legal fees since January of 2022, and that the district attorney is the one who authorizes it. Essentially, what the allegation here is that Ms. Fani Willis was having an affair with Mr. Nathan Wade. It's an affair because Mr. Nathan Wade is in fact married. She then assigned Mr. Wade to be the top prosecutor on the Trump case, and in her official capacity as the district attorney of Fulton County, Ms. Fani Willis authorized more than $650,000 in legal fees to be paid to Mr. Wade's office, some of which ultimately came back to her in the form of vacations that Mr. Wade took her on, including places such as Napa Valley, Florida, and the Caribbean, as well as tickets on both the Norwegian and Royal Caribbean cruise lines. But as crazy as all this already sounds, these allegations get even wilder for 3 main reasons. First, because Mr. Wade was assigned to be a special prosecutor, his appointment did not need to go through the normal channels of approval. Instead, here's how Mr. Rob Pitts, who is the chairman of the Fulton County Commission, here's how he explained the situation. Quote, typically, the county attorney recommends outside counsel to the Board of Commissioners for approval in civil matters. That's the distinction. This situation involves a special prosecutor. A special prosecutor, the district attorney has the authority and the right to hire such a person, meaning that by choosing to go the route of the special prosecutor, Ms. Fani Willis was able to not go through the normal approval process for an outside attorney, and instead, she was able to just unilaterally hire her lover. Then secondly, the amount that Mr. Wade is charging the county for his work is $250 an hour, which, according to Mr. Pines, is about double what others in the office are making. Quote, she's paying him double what others in that office are making, seemingly without justification. It just doesn't look good. However, even though it doesn't look good, it still might be the case that Mr. Wade is charging a premium because he's just really experienced at prosecuting RICO cases. He might have a lot of experience, and therefore he's getting paid double what others in the office are making just because he has all that knowledge that no one else does. But this is where the story gets even wilder, because the third point that was brought up in this court filing is the fact that it appears that Mr. Wade has never in his career prosecuted a felony RICO case. Quote, the lawyer representing Trump's co-defendant knows the special prosecutor and has researched his litigation experience. that research reveals that the special prosecutor has never tried a felony RICO case. The state of Georgia and the city of Atlanta has several lawyers who specialize in the prosecuting and defending of RICO cases. Despite having access to these resources, why would the district attorney instead appoint someone who has never tried a felony RICO case, particularly in a case with such national significance as this one? The special prosecutor, based on his lack of experience in this type of felony, would not be qualified under Fulton County standards to be appointed to represent any defendant in this case, given the complexity of the charges. If the special prosecutor is not qualified to defend this case under Fulton County standards, then how is he qualified to prosecute the case? Is that why the district attorney did not seek approval for his appointment? If so, why did she seek to appoint an unqualified lawyer without approval to preside over this prosecution? She assigned him to be a special prosecutor in order to avoid going through the normal approval process for an outside attorney. She then subsequently paid him a hefty amount in taxpayer dollars, while he, in turn, took her on beautiful vacations to California, Florida, and the Caribbean. And here's the cherry on top, just when you thought it couldn't get any shadier. Included among the exhibits in this court filing is this little gem right here, in which Mr. Nathan Wade charged the county $2,000 in order to travel and to meet with the White House counsel. In practical terms, this is the Fulton District Attorney's lead prosecutor in the Trump case, who also happens to be her romantic partner, charging taxpayers a cool $2,000 in order to travel to talk to Joe Biden's White House lawyers about prosecuting Joe Biden's political opponent. That is, if nothing else, absolutely amazing. Now, I will mention, of course, that everyone in America is innocent until proven guilty, and the information presented here in this filing is only an allegation. We here at the Epoch Times, we did reach out to the offices of both Ms. Fani Willis as well as Mr. Nathan Wade, but we have yet to hear back. In fact, the only response that's been made public thus far has been from a spokesperson representing Ms. Fani Willis, who told media outlets that she will, quote, respond through appropriate court filings, whatever that means. Regardless, getting back to the details here, the court filing goes on to allege that the checks that were sent to Mr. Wade from Fulton County, then subsequently the vacations that he purchased with Ms. Willis, this might be a form of services fraud, which would be a federal crime. And ironically, this court filing goes on to suggest that the two of them could be prosecuted under a federal racketeering statute, which is of course ironic because it's a similar statute that's being used to prosecute President Trump and his associates. Now again, thus far, there has not been a response from the office of the district attorney regarding these particular allegations. However, that's not to say that there wasn't any other developments in this particular case. Because you see, in this divorce case, Ms. Fani Willis was just subpoenaed to give her official testimony. The Wall Street Journal had the scoop, and here's what they wrote just earlier today. Quote, Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has been subpoenaed to testify in a colleague's divorce proceeding, according to a court filing, a development that could shed light on claims that Willis and the colleague carried out an improper romantic relationship as they prosecuted former President Donald Trump and others. In a court filing reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, a process server said that he showed up at Willis's office in Atlanta on Monday morning with a subpoena seeking her testimony in the Cobb County divorce case of Nathan Wade, who's a lawyer she hired as a special prosecutor in the Trump case, and his wife, Jocelyn Wade. The process server said that he left the subpoena filed by Jocelyn Wade's lawyer with Willis's executive assistant. Now, this divorce deposition is set to take place on January 23rd, which is about 2 weeks from now. However, the public will probably not have access to what will be said during the actual deposition. That's because, just for your reference, the records in this particular divorce case are currently under seal. However, the lawyer who's representing one of Trump's co-defendants is trying to change that by having them actually be made public. Quote, the lawyer said sealed records from the divorce case, which she viewed before the court limited access to the documents, substantiate her claims. She also asked the judge in that case to unseal the records. And so, there you have it. A completely wild turn of events in the Georgia RICO case against President Trump. Until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times.